Assalamu alaikum, family. Ooh, peace be unto you. Happy Saturday, and welcome to another powerful episode of the Sajdah Morning Coffee Talks. Today, we're going to be doing part two of our conversation on antitrust and anti competitive behaviors. Yesterday, we talked about the laws, but today, we're just going to talk about how these practices impact our spirit and some of the things that we can do to move around and continue to rise. So be a friend and tell a friend, and we'll be right back after a few short commercials and a brief prayer.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee. And he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee. And I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who in my judgment is the master historian, taught us that of all our studies, history is the most attractive, and it is best qualified to reward the researcher. History is most attractive. Why should history be most attractive? Because history is the recorded time of the human family in its struggle to overcome obstacles. There is no life that is without struggle. The Holy Quran teaches us that man meaning man and woman, is made to face difficulties. And after difficulty comes ease. But it is history that guides us through difficulty. For if you know how people who had difficulty yesterday got through, and if your difficulty is somewhat similar, then today we also can get through if we follow the guidance of history. This is why Carter G. Woodson and many of our black giants fought for black people to know our history. Because in not knowing our history, we don't have a guide. And without a guide, we are lost. No wonder the Bible...
Assalamu alaikum, family. You're tuned into the Sajdah Morning Coffee Talks. I am your host. We just had to get a new location. I'm actually broadcasting live from the Native Omaha Days here in Omaha, Nebraska. And I was in the lobby of our hotel, and as soon as I started the podcast, they started blasting the music. So I moved outside, and I know it's not the best view, but I think we can still get our conversation done today and talk about what we need to talk about. Okay. So I wanted to do part 2 today on these antitrust and anti-competitive behaviors. I spent last night making a few notes that I wanted to chime in because yesterday we talked about the laws, right? And today, I really want to talk about how this impacts us as a community, how it impacts our spirit, how it makes us feel, um, what we go through as a result of these anti-competitive gatekeeping and business gaslighting procedures and processes that happen in our community. And what happens is when this thing starts to happen, we start fighting and bickering amongst each other. We start doing this crabs in the barrel thing, like, I don't like you, so you can't get access to the crumbs that I got access to. And we start fighting and we start wanting each other to be just like each other. We start wanting uniformity instead of unity. All kinds of byproducts as a result of really us being gate kept. With us spending, what is it, $1.6 trillion in buying power, that means that we had to have the 1.6 trillion in order to spend it. And so if we have that kind of spending power, that means that there's enough money to go around. There's enough to go around for all of us. Okay? And so we don't have to think like we're still on the plantation and everybody got to be the same. We need diversity in business. We need different personalities. That is our currency. Our authenticity is our currency, our diversity as a people. Black people are not a monolith. We're not all alike. And one thing I say all the time, and I said this to Dr. George Fraser at Power Networking Conference a few years ago. And I said, you know what, George, what I like about your conference is that you embrace the totality of Black people, the diversity in our religious experiences, the diversity in our socioeconomic experiences, the diversity in our upbringing and ancestry. It's embraced and represented at the Power Networking Conference. And I think that is the beauty of our economic rise, is if we continue to make sure, or can be the beauty of our economic rise, is if we make sure that we embrace diversity. Everybody can't look alike. Everybody can't be alike. Okay. A few notes. I want to talk about the psychological and spiritual toll. Here's the stat I found yesterday evening. According to the Brookings Institution, Black business owners are twice as likely to be denied loans even with similar credit profiles. What does this do to us? It puts us in a position oftentimes where we don't necessarily have an emergency fund in our business. Something happens and it takes us out. We still have a lot of Black businesses that are still trying to recover from the pandemic. Um, People who have disasters, whether it's weather disasters, financial trauma like divorce, death, illness. And then one would say, well, then they should just get some disability insurance or they need to get this or that. But when you're cash strapped, oftentimes it becomes difficult to support yourself with these financial instruments. Now, I've heard all of these arguments from people, and they say, well, then maybe they shouldn't be in business. Maybe they don't have a choice but to be in business for themselves. What does that mean? Maybe there's no jobs in their community. Maybe there's no jobs that pay what they want to be paid or what they feel like they deserve in their community. Maybe they have a background that prevents them from having a certain type of job. Maybe they tried and they couldn't, or maybe they just have a passion that won't let them go. I just want us as a people individually, or I should say individually, separate and apart from the broader community, to stop utilizing the dividing factors that the colonizers use to divide each other. Okay? And again, I cannot stress this enough. Support one another, support Black businesses. There is no, um, you can't do this kind of thing alone. You can make small business moves, but the type of impact that we need people to make, legacy type of impact, you need support. And it's only right. It's only right. Part of the way in which during Reconstruction they were able to be so successful is because families looked out for each other. If they had to all live in one house to save up enough money so that one person can go out and start a business and then another person could go out and start a business, there was so much community development that I think it's important that we get back to that. All right. So look, let's go into this. I gave that statistic. I'll say it again. According to the Brookings Institute, Black business owners are twice as likely to be denied loans, even with small, similar credit profiles. All right. When you're denied fair access over and over again, it does something to your soul. When you are denied over and over and over again, it does something to your soul. This is why you all see me. It's a little chilly out here. It's like 57 degrees. So if you see me shivering and bundling up, that's why. Um, I tell my Black entrepreneurs to be consistent, because you may start off and you may not have that many customers. You may not have that many viewers, but you're building a pipeline. You're building a portfolio. When I started my podcast, it was very few people who were watching, very few people who were looking. Now it's rare for me to go anywhere where somebody doesn't say, hey, I watch Coffee Talks, right? But it came from consistency and building a body of knowledge, a catalog. Since 2009, I've been building this catalog. So I had enough catalog to really put most of it into my new book. Um, but just be consistent. This is my passion. If I don't do this, I don't know what else I would be doing. I believe I was born to help, to do a few things, and one of them is to help us with economic development and growth. And I'm grateful for each and every one of you that support and help me, because it's all about each one teach one, right? All right. So when you get denied over and over again, sometimes you start doubting yourself. Sometimes you internalize the rejection. And that's what the system wants you to do. Sometimes we start fighting with one another because I got denied and you didn't, or there's some community organization that got a big chunk of change, and then they use the same predatory practices to dole out the cash that the institutions use. And so now we're fighting amongst each other for crumbs that won't even complete any of our projects, right? I was talking yesterday to a brother, and he was saying, you know what? He said, it's like you got a $15 million project, and they say, okay, we're going to fund the project. And they give you 1.1 million for a $15 million project. You can't even break ground with that. By the time you pay your engineers, your structural engineers, your architects, get all your permits, and depending on what type of building, um, that may be very costly. Um, but our businesses are not just financial endeavors. They are really extensions of our purpose. And it takes that kind of spirit and ingenuity and purpose for us to move forward and do business today. It's much easier in today's climate to just give up and not do it. It's much easier to just go, you know what, forget it. I'm not doing it. Much easier. But it takes a person with tenacity. It takes a person with um, not only tenacity, but with a sense of purpose, with a sense of spirituality, a person who is driven, a person where something comes from deep down in their soul that makes them want to do this in order to just persevere. We don't get to just slap our shingles out on the outside of our building and then we just go for it. We get automatic customers like some of our counterparts. It takes some guts. It takes some consistency. All right. When we are shut out, I call that a sense of spiritual theft if we let it. I'm gonna go to this next part I wrote out. The Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission have the authority to stop these monopolies, but these laws are rarely enforced because they just weren't written with us in mind. And enforcement agencies are not culturally competent enough to detect the coded language, legacy practices, and systemic exclusion used against us. And I want to say that again because yesterday when I was making notes, I said, what would prevent some well meaning politicians from being able to address these issues? Some of it is just unawareness, some of it is because they serve the purposes of maybe people who are carrying out these practices. But something that I wrote, I said there's coded language, there's legacy practices, and then there's systemic exclusion that have to be identified and uprooted in order for us to eradicate these types of barriers. And I'm going to give you another solution at the end. Um, for example, if you want to purchase a franchise, there's a process called franchise steering. I learned this as a Massage Envy franchisee, where Black franchises are only offered locations in struggling neighborhoods, right? So you go to a franchise system, and we didn't have this problem with Massage Envy. We were able to pick our own location, and we were actually in a very affluent upper middle class area called Silver Spring, Maryland. So that part for us wasn't an issue. But I had looked into other franchises and I saw this type of what I call franchise steering, where I said, hey, I want to do this particular business in DC or Chicago. And then they said, yeah, we're interested in opening up a location here, here, and here. Give me three choices. And they're all in financially struggling neighborhoods where I would need a strong line of credit in order to make it, because you already know the income's going to go up and down. And there's the risk associated with living in a particular area. So Oftentimes they only offer us the franchises in a struggling neighborhood where they've already done the data analytics to determine the cap on the revenue that's going to be made in that community. You see, like in Chicago, we have all these Raising Cane's popping up. Well, if you opening up one downtown, like right next to Grant Park, where there's tons of festivals like NASCAR and Lollapalooza and Gospel Fest, you're probably going to be making a lot of money. But if you open up one in a neighborhood where people aren't really that familiar with the brand, you don't have a captive audience. Um, Maybe it's a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of other restaurants. Maybe the average income level in that in that neighborhood is lower. You're only going to make so much money. And that's how they tend to steer us from a franchise standpoint, because they steer us to those neighborhoods. And there's a lot of other reasons for that, but that's called franchise steering. Um, then there is procurement bias, okay, where certain government agencies don't qualify us as Black people as vendors. So you know how you may go to your local agency and it says doing business with the education department or the county or whatever. Sometimes they make the qualifications to becoming a vendor so stringent that they know that not that many of us are going to be able to pass those stringent qualifications. Okay. Um, a lot of times when you do the the data and analytics on how many Black vendors they may particularly have, sometimes they don't have very many. But then even if they do have a lot, the question then becomes, okay, let's follow the money. How many then got contracts, right? How many got contracts? So there's this procurement bias that happens. Some of us are, I was talking to somebody the other day and they're telling me how overqualified they are for a particular RFP that came out. And when they bid on it, they didn't get it. And then they bid on another one and bid again, and they got a portion of the contract. And that has happened to me where I bid on an entire contract and got to be a subcontractor of a subcontractor. And oftentimes we're just grateful to be a subcontractor of the subcontractor that we don't say anything. But what stops us from having the whole contract and running the whole contract and facilitating the whole thing? Those are things like procurement bias. Um, on the digital platform, there's things like platform suppression, okay, where Black owned products and podcasts like this one get shadow banned. And they come out and they tell us, you know, stop saying that. That's not true, whatever, whatever. Um, I know it to be true because I've had ways in which I've monitored um, my viewership, whether it was when I was on radio and we had data analytics where we could see the conversion, or even if it's just on this platform where I can see how many people are tuning in, but then YouTube and Facebook will say, well, nobody's there, right? You know when you're being shadow banned. I could put the same content up on one particular platform and get one particular response that might do a certain number of views, and then put it up on another platform and nobody hardly look at it. A lot of times platform suppression occurs based on the subject matter that you're talking about. See, in our pop culture, anything that's a little on the ratchet side, anything that's got to do with some level of gossip and stuff like that, those oftentimes are the subjects that get most of the following and get spewed out there, right, or sprinkled out there to many viewers. A lot of times when I'm talking about things like this, they'll say, oh, you violated community guidelines, especially when you start talking about healthcare biases and stuff like that. They're like, nope, non monetizing. This is why we need our own platforms. This is not hypothetical, it's happening. Okay, so here's a question. What do we do? One of the things that we do, which I saw a demonstration of yesterday at a luncheon that I attended and spoke briefly at the Revive Omaha Community Center, um, is we have to unite. We have to unite and support one another. Just this mere act of uniting, the mere act of supporting one another, confuses the algorithm. And I can't stress this to you all a lot. See, when shadow competitors say, okay, we're going to deny him loan access, we're going to deny um, his funding, we're going to raise the prices of his inventory. When they do all these things in the shadows, it's based on an assumption that then you're going to probably end up closing or folding, or they can steal from you whatever it is that they want from you, because they don't count on us having any help. They don't count on us unifying. They don't count on us calling one another and saying, hey, help me out. They don't count on us having a brother, a sister, a cousin, an auntie, somebody who's going to help us. Just that mere act changes the algorithm and can make a difference between a family making $100,000 a year to $100 million a year. That's how impactful unity, which the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said is more powerful than an atomic bomb. That's how impactful our unity is to these anti-competitive and antitrust practices. You know why? Because what happens is it's so automated and so baked into the system. And then nowadays that we live in this information-based society, the automation, the baked into the system, people don't have to actually enforce it anymore. It's written in the policies and procedures. It's written in the rules. It's written in the operating agreements. And so when you or I come and approach the table, there's already a systemic shadow banning that takes place, that our unity and our coming together and just supporting and helping one another actually trips that up. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of these business people out here don't all realize how letting us in will impact their economy. I was at a presentation yesterday, and there was this wonderful brother. Um, his name escapes me, but he did a financial advisory presentation. Powerful, powerful stuff. And the one thing that I thought was really impactful was his collaboration. The way he collaborated with Revive Omaha and the other entrepreneurs to offer those services, the way he was really focused on doing presentations and giving people literally like these public consultations. He didn't say that. That's what I called it, a public consultation on how to move your business forward. And most of it is rooted in collaborations, partnerships, and us coming together. Simple stuff that oftentimes can be difficult to do, but you ain't got to do it with everybody. Find that one person in your family, that one person that's a relative. Everybody brings something different to the table. Your homegirl, your homeboy, somebody who you know forever that has gifts in certain area. They may not be coming to the table with a lot of money, but they can come with their personality, their savoir faire. They may not be coming to the table with a big degree or something that's going to look good on paper, but they're coming to the table. Maybe they're the ones with the money. But pulling that together and pulling all the pieces together through collaborations and unity is the way in which we get around this type of systemic antitrust and anti-competitive practices that have been deployed against us for years. And I'm going to tell y'all something. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse because as the economy gets worse, then people start to tighten the purse strings. And anybody that they feel like they're carrying, they just say, we got to let them go. And in the event that they decide, okay, we're going to let them go, now we're competing for scraps, or we can be if we keep the same mindset. But if we say, okay, let us go, we're going to build our own stuff. We're going to build our own grocery stores. We're going to build our own hospitals. We can do it. We have enough professionals now as Black people in each of those fields where we can do it. And this is not a hate conversation. And I know these kinds of conversations scare people and they think that it's anti-white, but it's anti-self-sabotage. It's doing for self. Because in so many cases, people are discriminating against us and taking food out of our mouth. And in some cases, not because they don't like us, but because they got to survive themselves. And so we have to figure out how we're going to survive. All right. So I want you to be adamant about also filing antitrust complaints. Okay. Visit the FTC website, describe your experience, demand racial equity enforcement. I keep saying that we need a anti-competitive and an antitrust depository bank. And I'm actually going to work on that so that once we gather all of these complaints, we then take all of the evidence of the complaints and then all of the evidence of the violations and file one complaint. So it's not just one person going in with a complaint, because what the FTC or the DOJ will do is say, well, we don't have enough evidence that this is happening systemically. This could have been an interpersonal thing between you and this person. Maybe just didn't qualify. Maybe it was a mistake. But when we got 15 or 20 people that are experiencing the same type of things, now we can go in and say, look, these violations have cost these 15 or 20 businesses $15-20 million. There's power in those numbers. Again, we talked yesterday about document. When these kind of things happen to you, or even when you're going into a process, whether it's a lending process or anything that you and your family are doing, you and your business, your company are doing together, document the process, because you never know when you're going to need it later. And a lot of times we get so excited to finally get to the finish line that we don't realize that we've really been mistreated along the way. Okay. Um, Again, we talked about building what I call cooperatives and syndicates and chambers and organizations, things like that. We're going to be working here closely with the Omaha Chamber, um, things like that, where we have to come together and work in unity. Instead of one of us going and buying certain supplies, maybe 10 of us are buying those same supplies. I hope y'all hear me on this. Okay. Um, and the main thing that's important to me is educating. I want to make sure that we're educating each other. Um, Not so much that we're asking to be included, but we're asking to not be discriminated against and harmed. And when we're allowed to flourish in our businesses and when we're allowed to grow and develop without these things happening in the background, I think the nature of a capitalist society will be able to demonstrate that we are investment worthy. See, part of the problem is that people don't see us. They only see us as consumers. And they're not necessarily trying to partner with us. So we got to build ourselves up. And then we can make the choice on whether or not on who we want to partner with. So I really want to just thank Revive Omaha, Willie Barney and his wife, Yolanda, the new mayor, Mayor Ewing here, first Black mayor of Omaha, Nebraska. Because the mayor stood up yesterday and said something that I thought was powerful. He said, we want to make stuff happen. So moving away from the talk, moving away from the rhetoric, and going into operations and doing for self. So we're going to be coming home a lot, working on these businesses. You should have seen the businesses that were in the room. It was amazing, amazing. And there's more businesses needed. Revive Omaha, the Empowerment Center, has partnerships that they're doing in various different cities, New Orleans, Memphis, places like that. And, I think we should partner as well in Chicago. So, with that, family, we got a big day today. So I'm going to jump off of here early, but support the network, support the channel. Go to Sajdah Enterprises on Cash App, give a donation so we can keep this platform going. I'm working on that antitrust and anti-competitive repository. We're going to continue to educate. I'm going to put some of that in my new book so that you know how to recognize when this type of thing is happening to you and your business. Some of you are just content with just grinding, like I just got to grind. I got to keep making phone calls. I got to keep setting up meetings and not realizing that that's a dead end. And when these competitors are putting you in that kind of position by cutting you out of the revenue stream, they know that they're limiting your income. They know they're taking food out of your family mouth. That's it's demonic to me. And so we're going to start shining some light on that. And again, like I said, this is not about who we hate and who we like. This is about take your foot off of our neck economically, so that we can survive and thrive. We are the most creative people on the planet. And when given an opportunity, we can own and monetize some of the talents and gifts that are coming our way. There's also, let me say this one last thing before we go. You have to be very careful about taking chunks of money from investors and people unless you know what they are going to require of you as a result of taking that money. Okay. So if somebody comes to you and says, hey, here's $20 million, you got to be clear on what they want in exchange for that $20 million, what they're going to ask of you a year from now. And if they have something in their head or in their unwritten procedures that they want you to be in compliance with, because a year later down the road, you find yourself in a lawsuit. I have a client going through that now. You find yourself in a lawsuit because they'll say, well, we didn't intend on that. That wasn't what we wanted. I know somebody in Louisiana who owns a nail shop, a black owned nail shop. She went to a I guess you could call it like a community lending center. She got a combination of a grant loan, kind of a government thing. And she started to buy her products from other black owned businesses in the nail industry. Next thing you know, she gets a call telling her that she's required to use certain vendors. These certain vendors are these vendors that own all the other nail shops. Come to find out, they are the lobbyists behind the funding that the city was giving out to nail shops. They couldn't discriminate against her because at that time the DEI was in full effect. Well, these people said, well, she needs to be buying all her supplies from this Asian market. And so it turned into a whole thing. And so she's in a court battle right now because she's like, I'm not paying the money back because no one said in my contract that I had to purchase my supplies from a particular space. So we're going to spend some time educating on this so you all know how to deal with this. I'm going to dive into some of the things that we dealt with in the healthcare and wellness industries. So there's a lot of us who are going into home health, nursing, temporary agencies. You need to know what to look out for and what to report. All right. Okay. So I see y'all here. Let me announce y'all real quick because before I jump off here, Brother Lamont, Assalamu alaikum. I see you. Happy Saturday, Mom. I see you, Sister Betty, Sister Alita. Assalamu alaikum. Sister Monica, wa alaikum salam. Brother Robert 11X Minor, I see you here. Um, let's see. We got a weird person walking on the side of us. Yes, Brother Robert, I agree with you. They are not in the business of talking their face off, taking their foot off of our necks. Yeah, I have totally given up on us supporting. Oh, don't give up, Brother Robert. We got to just, here's the thing. When we look for us in totality to support one another, I think that's the mistake. Because everybody comes from different backgrounds. We're all different. We're all not going to support each other. We don't even all like each other, nor should we be required to all like each other. But that doesn't mean that we can't do business together. So start off with a small group of people. Find your tribe. It might be a cousin, it might be a brother, it might be a sister, it might be a sorority person, somebody that you're cool with. Start off with that small group of people, and you all support one another and start to practice some of these cooperative economic practices with one another, and then it'll grow from there. We have to educate and we have to be an example. All right, family, I got to get out of here. May Allah bless each and every one of you. Um, with the light of understanding, with successful businesses. Have a happy Saturday. We got a big parade today and some other things that we're doing. But I'll come back on. We'll talk next week. We're going to continue this conversation, and I'll give you guys some information on the book. I got to make a little promo for it, but if you just go to the art and science of business.com, you can be able to sign up to reserve the book, or you can go to, I'll do a video. So y'all got all the information. It's okay. I just decided yesterday, I got to add one more chapter, something I forgot to talk about. One more chapter. And then we'll get it out. The goal is to get it out by the end of this month. Okay. And we're going to work on using a Black book distributor this time and see how that goes as well. All right. Peace and blessings, family. Love you all very much. May Allah bless you, sending you more goodness than you've ever experienced or imagined. Until next time, peace and blessings.